Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
In honor of Black History Month, we thought we'd pay tribute and showcase the greatest defining black characters the world has come to love.
And this year, we're looking to the stars. Star Wars, that is. Folks, we're doing something special. In the spirit of trilogies in Star Wars, we're examining a black icon from each era, if you will.
So, without further delay, let's jump into the prequels and explore the history of Mace Windu on Black History Heroes Star Wars.
Star Wars?
All right, Dragon. All right, how you doing?
Okay.
So let's get right into it, Dragon. Let's get right into it. We're kind of doing we started with Finn and Dragon with the Black History Hero Star Wars stuff. It's interesting. It's kind of like it's a fun experiment. I feel like the comic book stuff that we've covered on the last couple seasons of Black History Heroes when Black History Month has come about were a lot more straightforward because, of course, they have a lot of comic book legacy behind them, a lot of backlog and story and, and kind of big innovative firsts. And I feel like the Star Wars stuff, Dragon, it's a lot more thoughtful. Like, I feel like we kind of have to put our thinking caps on to come up with introspection on these guys in a way that truly does do justice to Black History Month. But honestly, Dragon, I'm up to the challenge. I'm up to the challenge because I feel like it's really interesting. And where would you say we landed on Finn, Dragon? Just as a recap here, because this is a trilogy after all.
Well, with Finn again, we like Finn. He definitely got kind of the shaft towards the latter half of things, but again,
hey! I'm sorry, it's true.
Point being, Finn, incredible sell of a character. We kind of had a realization that as wonderful as Finn is, his story kind of played out by the end of Last Jedi, and he was kind of destined. It seems like he was kind of destined to die. Unfortunately, with him living, he almost went the path of a Han Solo. Of like, guy kind of outlived his welcome.
You know what? I just pretend that his role in Rise of the Resistance is the equation of what his role in Rise of Skywalker should be, and just kind of leave it at that.
Fair enough. The point
because
being,
in Rise of Resistance, he's doing exactly what he should be doing, man. He's on the Star Destroyer. He's hacking droids. He's deep undercover. It's great.
I mean, look, the point
he's
being,
making one-liners about elevators.
Yeah. Point being, fun aside with Rise of the Resistance. I mean, point being, he does have kind of a full circle thing where he does kind of get the hilariously kind of like shoot the First Order and in General Hux's character, and basically kind of call him out, and then we have like he kind of is kind of assumedly the inspiration behind the stormtroopers also going the path of Finn. So there's a bit of an inspirational aspect. Could be a little bit more in focus, to put it delicately, but the point being, Finn is always his point. He did bring kind of new life, and it was very much kind of like a really refreshing lead for a Star Wars.
And Dragon, I think the defining thing for Finn for me is that image that you sent me of John Boyega at the Children's Hospital.
Yes. Oh, God, I love that. The fact that he just basically, I guess, again, last thing because we got to move on to obviously who we're
I know
today. But the thing with Finn and John Boyega is that basically John Boyega really brought to life is kind of the youthful, fresh experience to anybody through Star Wars. He was our eyes on the ground character, and that's kind of what he brought. And I think it's why kids and so many people have kind of connected to him. It's like he was our perspective character, kind of thrown into the world of Star Wars, every kid's dream, and it's kind of like a stormtrooper given kind of this new life. Is like he had his childhood robbed from him, now he got to re-experience it. Kind of going from stormtrooper to resistance, and it was quite fun. It brought the youthful, like the youthful glow of Star Wars, like the audience and the new next generation coming into it fresh. That's Finn in a nutshell. So here we're talking about Mace Windu.
Yeah, we're going to transition from kind of someone who brought that youthful spirit into someone who kind of has the the stern resilience of one Samuel L. Jackson. So, Dragon, let's get into it. Let's get into the creation and the first appearance on screen. How did Mace Windu come about conceptually, Dragon?
All right, so of course Mace Windu is major, cinematic debut. Phantom Menace, Episode 1 from 1999, played by the incomparable Samuel L. Jackson.
And unfortunately, he doesn't get a ton to do in that movie. We'll get into that.
Everybody's got to start somewhere. You got to earn a place. We can't all be Finn. We can't all be like the lead character. We got to building blocks, my friend.
But if anything, Finn and Samuel Jackson kind of have like this like reverse arc where Mace Windu is by far the most important in the third movie.
Is, and it's odd. You know what's funny though? If you actually look at our cast of characters, think about it. Mace gets his big thing in the third movie. Finn, the first movie, and our last character in the second movie. So it's kind of
interesting.
Anyway, okay. Apparently, now again, I want to preface this by saying some of it sounds a little too good to be true. So take it with a grain of salt in how Mace Windu came out. I know how we got Samuel L. Jackson the role. That I do know. So let me start with that. So here's what I do know. So apparently Samuel L. Jackson, he mentioned while he was on a talk show that basically it was a Richard Pryor thing, like Richard Pryor from Superman 3 up there, where he mentioned on a talk show, oh man, I'd love to be in a Star Wars movie. And basically, he wasn't like saying, "Oh, I want to be like a lead in a Star Wars movie." No, he was very humble. But I just make me a stormtrooper. Sure. I want to watch a Star Wars movie and recognize, okay, that's me running through there in the stormtrooper costume. That's all he really wanted.
You know who the equivalent of that is for for Rise of Skywalker Dragon?
Who?
Dominic Monaghan.
There you go.
And I love that little hobbit just scurrying around, and everyone gives him shit in that movie. But I don't know. I like how enthusiastic he is in the interviews. Like, oh, I get to play a rebel guy. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
That's the thing. Basically, just pitch like something very humble. Like, oh, make me a stormtrooper so I can point out. Hey, look, there I am. I'm in a Star Wars movie. Yay. And apparently Samuel L. Jackson, he's going to said this, and this is really, I thought it was so adorable. I never knew this about Sam Jackson. I love it, is the fact that Sam Jackson, apparently, his film selection process for when he selects his roles, at least for the most part, I imagine there are a few exceptions, but the majority, the way he's claimed to select his film roles is that he selects the films that he as a kid would have loved to watch. And again, like a Star Wars movie, you can like the Avengers. I'm sure him as a kid
would have loved to watch Shaft.
Well, yeah, seriously, yeah.
Well, actually, no. That's a bad example. That's a bad example.
What I'm saying. It's a terrible example.
God, that's a terrible example. I'm trying to think of a movie that's Pulp Fiction. I'm trying to counteract this, Dragon. I'm sorry.
Okay, look, I know it. Here's a better example. I just cannot for the life of me.
I mean, Shaft is R-rated, all right?
I'm thinking of the movie Eugene Levy that he did. It was like a really cheesy movie to do with Eugene Levy. The point being,
why are we trying to counteract this attitude?
Well, you're the one.
I know, I'm horrible. What am I doing? I'm sorry, folks.
Okay, the point being childlike wonder, which is quite good. I thought it was just so amusing. No wonder
childlike wonder and Tiki trying to ruin the childlike wonder, apparently.
There's the thing about it, he gets Frozen, he gets the Incredibles with Frozen, which he really loves.
No, you're right. He
gets Frozone, he gets
and even Fury. Stuff that's R-rated, like Deep Blue Sea, it's kind of like, well, it's a giant shark movie, and he gets to be eaten by the freaking shark.
I mean, Jurassic Park, for pity's sake. I mean,
totally.
It's not a big role, but he's in Jurassic Park. Anyway.
Well, it's not a big role, but he does have a very memorable death.
He lends
not
a
as
hand
memorable as the lawyer, but still.
He lends a hand, to say the least.
God. All right.
Anyway, but you see my point though. It's kind of a nice little track record Sam Jackson's going to build for himself there. Anyways, the point being on a talk show, kind of mentions, I love being in a Star Wars movie. And again, he's like just pitching like vaguely like a stormtrooper. He talks to George Lucas about that, and basically George Lucas, he actually calls him and invites him. I believe he invites him to the ranch, and basically gets a call out of the blue, and he gets like called in for like a wardrobe test. He says, "Okay, we'll put you in the movie. You got a role for it." He had no idea what it was, and basically it's revealed like he's putting on these Jedi robes and everything. Oh my God, I'm a Jedi! Wow! And not only that, he has scenes against Yoda. It's like, oh my God, I'm talking to Yoda in this movie. So he was very elated for sure. So he was very elated. Basically it was a character. Basically, he just kept being surprised that he kept showing up in the other movies. Like, oh God, Mace Windu's coming back. All right, so I'm still in the franchise. All right, so just Mace Windu, he kept coming back. He had 2 asks for the role, which won't come into play until we get to kind of our next segment here. But on to like the origin of Mace Windu, the character. Again, this is all speculative. It's not a lot here. It's just from what I understand. Apparently, Mace Windu was an abandoned, recycled concept from the original days of Star Wars in the very beginning. like going back to A New Hope. I'm talking about where apparently Mace Windu, uh, he was he was thrown around. They basically his role changed so much he eventually got cut out of the movie. Where eventually maybe the narrator, as per Siri, would have been like a vocal narrator, and that would have been Mace Windu. It could have been a narrator for Star Wars. There are the other permutations apparently were like he was going to be Leia's brother at one point. Obviously, that didn't take. He's going to be a friend of Luke Skywalker's. The point being, this Mace Windu character, a character by the name Mace
Windu.
The
name, at the very least, has been floating around for a long time.
Yes. Apparently, the name Mace Windu has been floating around for a time and gone through many permutations. And it almost like in Toy Story, of all these ideas that eventually ended up in a sequel, you kind of had that with the sequel trilogy. Right. So, assuming that is true, that's the origin of Mace Windu. And so, overall, Tiki, how do you feel about Mace Windu?
It's funny because Mace Windu, like we kind of established, I think he gets by far the best stuff in the third movie. And honestly, Dragon, I feel like in the past couple movies, with the exception of one really big moment he has in episode 2, he's just kind of there. But it is Sam Jackson, and it is kind of like you said, one of those humble things of like, a celebrity being put into Jedi robes and interacting with Yoda and everything. And he does have a presence, and I like that Sam Jackson does take it seriously, And the stuff that we do get in specifically Revenge of the Sith is great. I do think he is one of the most fleshed out characters in that whole movie. I think it's almost kind of underreported how much how much of a big role he plays in that movie. And importantly, also, Dragon, I haven't seen all of Clone Wars, but I did watch the big, Jango Fett Boba Fett getting his revenge for Jango Fett storyline, the 3-parter in season 2 that you pointed out to me. And I gotta tell you, I fell in love with that, man. We'll get into that when we get into that, but that was definitely a big sell for me to finally watch Clone Wars, and I very much intend to.
So, two things.
So just hold on, just overall, I view Mace Windu as kind of just like the stoic badass of the Star Wars universe. He's kind of like he's Qui-Gon Jinn with more personality, I think.
Sure. So, Mace Windu for me. So, of course, I was going to bring up is that I watched Clone Wars for 2 reasons. I just finished Clone Wars like this very night. Actually, I finished all the Clone Wars for 2 reasons. One, to get ready for season 7, which is premiering this month, actually this very week. And 2, to basically brush up my Mace Windu for this very day. Mm-hmm. So Mace Windu to me, now that I've kind of have a fuller picture of Mace Windu than I ever would have had before. Mace Windu, to me, he's a character with a cool. Basically, Mace Windu is a character with a cool surface cell, who developed layers over time. Basically, you got Sam Jackson with a purple lightsaber. That's your surface cell, man. He's a cool, stoic-looking Jedi. He kind of has the big chair at the council.
So, Dragon, I'm still kind of like in that surface level mode, and this is almost kind of like an animated Batcave episode. You're kind of like taking me along for the ride, if you will. You're the expert.
and basically, what I kind of noticed is that I feel like he was a surface cell who developed layers. You gotta remember, Clone Wars obviously is in the aftermath of the Star Wars prequels. So basically, they kind of retroactively.
Well, it's in the aftermath specifically of Attack of the Clones, right?
Well, yeah. What I mean is, like, I'm trying to remember. No, here's the thing. That show was in 2008, so that was after the. Oh, wait.
Oh, you're saying like culturally it's in the aftermath. Yeah, okay, I gotcha. Yeah. Sorry.
Not counting the Tarkovsky one. The Tarkovsky one is in between the movies. But what I'm saying is, like,
prefer, but
it's it's good, but it might anyway. Regarding so what was I? Oh, here's what I was getting at. So the fact is, retroactively, they have kind of the benefit. They add a lot of layers to them. They really make them keep kind of sing and interesting. And at certain places, again, per the episode I showed you, for case in point. And I feel over time, and not even like in expanded universe stuff and all sorts of other stuff we've done with Mace Windu and the following he's developed in certain places. The point is, like, I think this character developed layers over time, and kind of upon revisiting the character, that eventually measured up to kind of the cool surface cell that was the actor. I mean, my big thesis statement with Mace Windu, it kind of blew my mind on the rewatch, kind of watching through all this, and kind of especially when you re-examine like a Revenge of the Sith. This character perfectly parallels Anakin Skywalker in many ways, and it's quite fascinating. So
he's like the Anakin Skywalker success story. He's
exactly
what Anakin Skywalker could have been.
Yeah, basically, he is a reflection of everything the Jedi, basically the Jedi Order, and we'll get to more of that when we get into it. The point being, I think Mace Windu, he's kind of a perfect reflection of what Anakin could have been, but also the flaws as well as the strengths of the Jedi Order. So a lot of really interesting stuff to break down Mace Windu. So without further ado, let's jump into kind of the legacy component of things. Let's talk legacy.
All right, so we already pretty much covered the Samuel Jackson of it all, Dragon. I feel like just sort of in the same way that kids are like, hey, this cool, energetic, pardon the terminology, I don't know how other to put it, but young and hip, the stormtrooper character. With Sam Jackson, it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of like you were alluding to in my endless arrogance with Shaft. It's it's almost kind of that, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a kid just seeing like, hey, it's Shaft in Star Wars. It's Sam Jackson, as a Jedi Master, and just already right there with Sam Jackson, you just got the cool factor. You know what I mean? I feel like out of all the Star Wars casting, Sam Jackson might be the biggest kind of ratio of like star power to actually important to the overall narrative, because of course you have a lot of stars who are who are there just kind of like do cameos, or you got your Alex Guinness kind of legacy castings and all that, but Mace Windu was like a big superstar when he got cast, with Sam Jackson. And like you said, it's a character that just kept getting more and more to do over time, which is that's not a thing that usually happens with characters who are like super they're cast in a like I said, usually in series like, I'm sorry, I'm kind of trailing off, go ahead.
So the piggyback off your thought, though, is that we're in the tradition of kind of we cast certain roles, but of course Alec Guinness being kind of a prime example. I think the more appropriate comparison to make for the Black history of it all is that we have a tradition of a famous and kind of like a famous and beloved African American actor in a Star Wars movie, which is the second time it's ever happened, because we had Billy D. Williams, of course, is the most famous example. And we have, what's kind of the modern equivalent of that for going into the prequels? Like, who was kind of almost an equivalent to a Billy D. Williams for this decade would probably be like a Sam Jackson, someone who's in everything, even in more movies than Billy D. Williams, and just kind of like people are loving it. It's like they never say like a not so kind word about him, except for my associate here at the start. They go, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't know why I went into that. Jesus Christ.
Doesn't matter. The point being, it's like another kind of like a huge kind of African American actor in the role, which I'm sure brought in like another. Jackson brought into yet another mega franchise, another film series. Yet again, like we bring Jackson to Star Wars, we bring him into the Marvel, we bring him in everything now. So again, it's like Jackson bringing a lot there. But also, I want to attest. I would imagine bringing a lot of people, like maybe people who weren't specifically in the Star Wars, or just like the kids. Like, I don't know if I can get in the Star Wars. I'm not seeing myself quite represented. But like, oh my God, not only is Sam Jackson in this movie, he's a Jedi. I gotta see this movie. If you're Tiki and I. Whitest white man you can ever imagine. We're David Hyde Pierce skiing. That's at least that's what I am. So we can never relate to what.
I mean, it's like I am Italian, so like my skin complexion is darker than like someone who's, let's say, Canadian, but still, apples.
my point is, we can't directly relate to the experience, but
absolutely not. God, no, yeah, no way, no.
Yes, but you see my point. That the fact is, like, if you're an African American kid, like like saying, "Man, I love Star Wars," but aside from Lando, I can't really see myself represented as a really cool character. It's like, oh my God, a lead character. Like, we have our own Luke Skywalker. That's awesome.
Totally.
So speaking of Jedis and such, let's talk about another legacy component. So second to possibly Yoda, at the very least, I assume like it was kind of Yoda passed it down to this guy. Mace Windu is the Grand Master of the Jedi Council. He's the head honcho. If you look at Phantom Menace, he's the guy sitting in the chair. The rest of them are sitting in like little beanbag chairs. He's the one who gets the actual chair before they all get kind of a fancier room in the second one. The point though is also, from what I understand, I don't know how much this is expanded universe, but I assume like it goes by the point we know he's a Grandmaster. I think he's the Grandmaster upon further research. So Mace Windu supposedly is the youngest Grandmaster in the history of the Jedi Council. Like before Anakin Skywalker was led on.
Was the Grandmaster like the Jedi equivalent of a Grand Moff?
Probably a little better, but yeah. Oh, it's seriously, before Anakin Skywalker came along, being taken in as young as he was and trained as a Padawan, like that was a record. That like he was like the youngest guy to ever kind of like one become master, but also just to kind of be inducted into the thing. It was a big deal.
So in a lot of ways, I kind of wonder if there's sort of like this tension there, and you can tell me more, because you've watched Clone Wars, but is there maybe like kind of like a sibling rivalry sort of thing going on, or maybe like a, like an upperclassman thing or something, like a rivalry with Windu? Yeah, there is.
It's not so much in Clone. It's pretty much what you see in the main movie, Steve. But it's the idea that it's like a military commander and like the private, and that Mace Windu again. He and Anakin do have that thing in common.
Like there's a military commander and a private who are around the same age, and it's just like, oh boy, this is not great.
It's that Mace Windu is very militaristic, and he sees a lot of himself in Anakin, and he's the only. If you'll notice, he's really cold to Anakin ever since the first movie. He was sizing up the kid, kind of looking at him.
Right.
So again, one way you could look at it is he's just going by his instincts, which again, a big thing for him is he has really finely honed instincts. And as we see, he's got really good instincts, knowing who to, seeing kind of the writing on the wall with this kid. And he was kind of right, but he still could have been a little nicer to him. But that's the point, though. He was hard on him to help him. He was hard on Anakin to basically, he saw himself in him. He wanted to rein him in so he could basically end up like him. So that's why he was hard on him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the point. So there was a bond. Like I think he did like Anakin. He wanted to, he had his doubts, but he did see like if we can keep this kid on the straight and narrow.
Piccolo Gohan.
Yeah, I guess it's a little Piccolo Gohan, yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, it's not as warm and fuzzy as Piccolo. I love Piccolo and Gohan. That's the thing.
You're right. It's not as warm as fuzzy. You're right. And it's not, I think Piccolo, it's more of like, kind of like a parental thing, even though Goku is still in the picture. But I digress.
Well, you see, I see where you're going now.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's see. So point being, on the whole, there. So again, he's the perfect model for how a Jedi views themselves and how a Jedi should be. He is the perfected. Honestly, I keep going with he's the perfected Obi-Wan, but he's if Anakin did not turn to the dark side, it would have been Mace Windu. He's kind of like Obi-Wan, even as we see Obi-Wan. He's good humored. Obi-Wan. He does care about people. Again, Obi-Wan. He kind of battles a little bit of kind of the feelings of the Jedi are trying to. Obi-Wan never wavered, but he did feel occasionally. Where Mace Windu, he has it perfectly balanced, where he's not dipping into it. Basically, Mace Windu is the model Jedi. He's the model for what the Jedi view themselves as, which is why he's very kind of cold and militaristic at many a time. That's why he's so darn focused all the time.
I get the sense that Mace Windu is like the straight A student.
Yes.
And Anakin Skywalker is like the B student with a lot of potential.
Yeah.
All right.
Basically, if Obi-Wan's like an A student who does the research, does the study,
then Mace Windu is like the A+.
Yes, he's the A+ student. Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
He's the voice of the council. He gets to say everything. Basically, the only one he defers to is Yoda, because Yoda presumably trained him in everything. Presumably.
Yeah, which is a really cool detail too. I like that. I like that out of all the Jedi, is like him and Yoda have kind of like this thing going on. Anyways, so let's see. Any other things to say about the Grandmaster status?
Yes. So I should admit, he's the reason he got the Grandmaster status. That he has a mastery of the Force, and that's like that's another reason he's the head honcho. Like he created his own lightsaber technique. He has his own lightsaber technique, which essentially is like the most essentially. I
assume this is something we get more into in Clone Wars.
A little bit, yeah. Where he basically he developed a technique that's so structured that basically it's like he can do it like he can keep his emotions in check. Because the idea, essentially, I heard this somewhere. The idea is that Mace Windu, he loves the battlefield. He had Anakin Skywalker's kind of fatal flaw, and he could lead to there was a fear with Mace Windu, much like there was a fear with Anakin Skywalker, apparently. that Yoda was afraid that Mace Windu could have ended up almost like an Anakin Skywalker at the end of the day. He could, because he was so good at battle. He was like the fiercest, best warrior the Jedi's had.
Right.
As you kind of saw with those battle droids and some of that Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars stuff. The man killed like a whole lot of battle.
Yeah. Oh my God, Jesus.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he reached the relish in the battles and everything, and basically that technique that he developed over time basically honed it so that he could keep his control without basically getting angry while fighting. That's why he's the Grand Jedi. So basically, he was perfectly balanced. He found the balance that Anakin didn't find until much, much, much later in life. Sure. So he honed his instincts. He has good instincts with people and like who to trust and everything, sizing people up. He also he created this technique, the Shatterpoint technique. Now, I don't know fully how this works, but this is like an expanded universe thing. So I don't know if it even counts in the things we watch.
Oh now. Dear God, expanded.
The point being, I'll keep it simple.
Oh man,
it's basically something that doesn't take away, but if you want to factor in there, you can. So this is a simple.
I didn't even think about like expanded universe lore for prequel trilogy characters. That's a whole other can of worms I'd never even considered.
Just to keep it simple. I don't want to get into the whole because right now I just go off the whole like, whatever Disney says along with the Clone Wars series. That's what's canon these days. Or I don't even want to. The point being,
I know stuff like Mara Jade isn't canon, obviously, but oh God.
Okay, look, I'm just going to keep it simple. He developed this thing called a Shatterpoint technique, which basically is like Fracture from Super Academy. Tiki, remember when we created Fracture?
Oh yeah.
Basically, I swear to God, I had no idea what the Shatterpoint thing was when I came up there. Basically, he sees the faults in people using the Force. That's basically what it is. And that's how he did his thing in Revenge of the Sith. He found the weakness in battle.
Oh wow, huh?
That's the Shatterpoint technique. All right.
Okay, so purple lightsaber dragon. Beyond just the fact, do you want to break this down in terms of like how did we get the color and how that came about, and then like the in lore of it all?
Okay, so here's how we in the filmmaking of it all got the purple lightsaber. It's very simple. So Samuel Jackson
thought it would look cool, right?
It's even better. There's a very funny practical reason for it, Tegan. I love it.
Okay.
So Samuel Jackson, this is awesome. Samuel Jackson, very simply, remember, he doesn't wield a lightsaber until the second movie. He just sits around the first movie. Just sits around. And
Sure. Yeah.
So he gets to wield a lightsaber, and of course, there's a big Coliseum scene in episode 2, and there's going to be a whole bunch of Jedi there with lightsabers, and basically he wanted to be able to find himself in a crowd very easily. So he suggested he basically put he had two demands in the whole thing, where he wants a purple lightsaber and he wants essentially the initials carved on it, BMF, for which is a little Pulp Fiction nod to Bad Mother. Well, you can fill in the blank. So on the button that turns on the lightsaber is like a little engraving of BMF. Anyway, the point is, he wanted a way to find himself, and there was, by the way, caused a big stir online at the time. Back when the internet was still in its infancy, this whole he's got a purple lightsaber. What does this mean? They've been green.
Oh boy.
He couldn't say no to Sam Jackson, or else that's the thing. He couldn't say no to him on. So he had to. So that's why we have a purple lightsaber. That's why they had to create all the reasons, like what it means, the significance of it all. So importantly, though, if you want to make it again apply to the Black History in a sense, he brought a new color into the into the mythos in many regards. He brought a new color into the mythos, which in the grand
quite literally, yes.
That's what I'm saying. If you want to look at the grand mythos here, and again, I don't know, but don't hound me on the expanded universe stuff here, folks. I'm going to keep it simple. We don't get Rey's lightsaber at the end of Rise of Skywalker. Or kind of her yellow lightsaber. We don't get it without purple being introduced into the fray. I don't think.
Yeah. I think just in general with Mace Windu, I feel like it's kind of because I don't quite know the in canon. I don't know. Why don't we get into the in canon stuff and I can talk more about it? All right.
Okay, so here's the in canon. Like here's the origin for the purple lightsaber. So, each color has a meaning behind it now. So violet means
as you can clearly see in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge with the Kyber crystals. Collect them all.
Which I definitely did my research for on that one too, by the way, factoring that.
Did you really?
Yes. Anyway, so violet, the purple is basically mastery of combat, and also it's a very rare Kyber crystal. It's one of the rarest Kyber crystals you're going to find, which again is why only Mace Windu has the purple lightsaber. Mace received it apparently when he was on a mission at age 14, back during his early Padawan days. He's coming out of a youngling, and basically and you see this. There's a really great episode in Clone Wars where you see them actually construct the lightsaber, and David Tennant's in it, and it's awesome. Point being, Mace Windu, age 14, he was sent on a mission to this planet called, I'm probably mispronouncing because it sounds like it's too simple. It's called Hurricane. He goes to this hurricane planet, and he helps the inhabitants of the planet. Actually, I think he used like the Shatterpoint technique on somebody by accident. He hurt somebody. He went out of his way to really heal them, and basically in gratitude, and basically him taking responsibility for a mistake that he made, they gifted him the Kyber crystal. So that's the origin for his purple lightsaber. And also the other meanings are like the blue lightsaber apparently is for guardians. Basically, it's the guys who physically are in battle, like your Lukes and your Anakins. That's what the blue lightsaber's for. Like guys are going to really just it's kind of your rank and file lightsaber, the blue. Gotcha. Green is introspective. That's like when Luke, he's learning more about when Luke becomes a master. And when you have like a Yoda and a Luke, they have the green lightsaber because they're introspective. They learn more. When you're in tune with the Force, you get a green lightsaber. And yellow, like Rey, they're sentinels, like they're guards. They have like the really kind of like anyway. So we'll color breakdown of lightsabers. Okay,
collect them all.
Yes.
All right. Okay, but just generally speaking, Dragon, just purple lightsaber, really cool, makes Mace stand out. I feel like it's one of the one of the most memorable things about Mace Windu as a character, in terms of Sam Jackson's goal of just having something that we can just kind of point to and be like, that's Mace Windu. I feel like the purple lightsaber does its job in that regard very well.
That separates him from the pack very, very simply.
Yeah.
Sometimes, folks, it's like we don't give Boba Fett without just like, hey, who's that cool looking T-shaped guy with the face?
Exactly.
Sometimes, folks, a gimmick will take you far, and if you're lucky enough, they'll retroactively make it really cool, and that happened.
All right. Okie dokie. Let's see. Next up, we have. Oh boy, this is one of my favorite categories here, Dragon. So, lo and behold, through a little bit of subtext, Dragon, Mace Windu is essentially kind of a Batman of the Star Wars universe. He creates the villains, Dragon.
That he does. We're gonna dive into a little further later, folks. Just to kind of go over, just to kind of expand, like just to kind of like flagpole the highlights here. Mace Windu, he's created or really ticked off a lot of really big enemies in Star Wars. So he created Boba Fett, which we're gonna get to. He kind of crippled General Grievous.
Oh God.
And also, ipso facto, he scarred the crap out of the Emperor, and in part,
basically the reason why Palpatine looks like a prune.
Yes, and in part, he created Darth Vader. He wasn't like the lava part. That's on Obi-Wan, but the other half, though, that's Mace Windu.
Sure.
And again, so it's kind of basically it's kind of a little bit of a hypocrisy, and that's a big thing you want with Mace Windu's character and the Jedi Order as a whole. There's a lot of hypocrisy in the Jedi. No question.
Which is honestly something that I feel like at the time was really hard to... Like, we were so hyped up on, like, just Jedi being, like, this ultimate force for good.
Yes, and of course, years later, we have some interesting stuff with Luke.
Sure. And then it's just an interesting kind of which is like by far the most well thought out stuff in the sequel trilogy that connects back to the original trilogy.
Is that we're calling out the Jedi weren't perfect, that whole thing, yeah.
Right. All right. So with that in mind, Dragon, anything else about the enemies?
No, just again, like
this is kind of like a cool little benchmark that we'll get into later.
Yes, the point is Mace Windu had a big impact on all of Star Wars. So that's speaking of the all of Star Wars. Let's go over the grand arc of Windu. Let's go over what he does.
So Phantom Menace, he sits around on a beanbag chair. All right, next, Attack of the Clones.
Okay, come on, just to give it the point being leader of the council. Importantly, it is two scenes, and roughly is two scenes in the movie. Okay, he sizes up Anakin Skywalker, and again, his really good instincts.
No, you're right, Dragon. That is very much the big important factor in episode 1 for sure. Is that sizing up?
Like he and Yoda, they size up Anakin. Yoda's asking the right questions, and Jackson's just kind of really well kind of visualizing, like, okay, there's a guy who's staring down this kid, and he can feel the doubts, man. He's like. He feels the doubts. Importantly, another important thing is that Mace Windu, in showcasing the flaws of the Jedi, There's an overconfidence of Windu in the first movie. He was a little overconfident. There's an arrogance a little bit of an arrogance of power in that they thought, no, the Sith can't be coming back. This Darth Maul character is just like he's an assassin. He's no Sith.
Dragon. So remind me, Dragon. You said that he was the youngest Grand Master in Jedi history.
Yes.
So you know what that means?
He wasn't proud of his boy.
No, that's a good pull, but that wasn't the in-joke I was going for, Dragon. It means he has the arrogance of youth.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. That's great. It's better than mine. It's better than mine.
The arrogance of you from Adam West from Batman vs. Two-Face.
Yeah, the arrogance. No, but seriously,
one of our favorite Adam West deliveries in that. Anyways,
but seriously, so that arrogance of power, which again, as we've established, a little bit of Mace Windu's flaw there, where again, it's like this guy was like the most valiant warrior who, again, he's found a balance, but still, it's like so much. Mace Windu constantly is proud of saying Jedis are peacekeepers, because especially when we get into the sequel, his big statement is like, we don't want a war on our hands, a clone war on our hands, but more. Point being, we don't want a clone war on our hands because the Jedis were peacekeepers. The idea, Tiki, is that the Jedis, as you've seen, the Jedis were the only police force that we really had. The Republic had a problem. They go to the Jedis. They're going to sort things out, man. They're our muscle. We don't need an army. We don't need a war. This is just stars. No wars yet. We're all it's just trade issues. You know, it's the quiet time.
It's just around.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And that's the thing. I like to think, my own headcanon, I like to think that out of guilt over Qui-Gon Jinn, over the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, and that Qui-Gon Jinn vouched for this kid, that he allowed Anakin to be taken on, which ultimately will be Mace Windu's great folly in his story. So ultimately, he accepts the kid out of like Mace Windu as a character, again, representing the Jedi, he has very little humanity, at least negligible humanity. Obviously, I'm not saying he's a bad guy or anything. I'm just saying that he keeps his emotions so in check and rarely will he let sentiment really influence him. Like this little moment, I like to think that a little bit of sentiment over like, I was wrong, Qui-Gon Jinn, I got him killed because I underestimated the situation because we're Jedis and I assumed power was, nothing was wrong. And maybe I shouldn't look past this kid because Qui-Gon supported him, so he lets us in. And of course, ultimately, that's what brings him down. It's that little moment of humanity is what Mace is undoing. So you wanted to be a little bit more human. By the same token, though, him being a little human is what got him killed. So okay, so that's really all we got for Phantom Menace.
All right, so Attack of the Clones. Again, it's a lot of stuff with him and Yoda kind of trying to figure out the conspiracy, and then of course he gets this big moment with Jango at the end. You want to break some of that down? It's been a while since I rewatched Attack of the Clones.
Let me just call out, he looks great after 10 years. Remember, from Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones, 10 years goes by. It looks exactly the same.
Oh, God.
That's Jedi living for you, folks. That's Sam Jackson meets Jedi living for you. The marriage made in heaven. Man, seriously, Sam Jackson looks good after all these years. He does look pretty well.
He does, yeah.
Maybe a little heavier, with like just the smidge. Like obviously, Sam Jackson doesn't run anymore. That's his thing. He doesn't run anymore, but still, he's good. Point being, so Mace. Basically, this lesson that we kind of flirted with at the end of Phantom Menace, because the idea is like now a war is really beginning, desperate times, and he's facing a little bit of corruption. The Attack of the Clones is him facing full-on corruption in the form of Count Dooku. Count Dooku is the big idea. Right, Count Dooku is the one who trained. Sorry, I'm trying to get this right because I keep getting back and forth. I think Yoda trained Count Dooku. Yoda trained Count. That's right.
And of course, Yoda also trained Mace, so there's kind of like a mirror image there as well.
Yes, and I think Count Dooku then trained Qui-Gon Jinn. I think that's how it went. I think so because they had a connection to Qui-Gon.
That would make sense. That would make sense in terms of the timeline.
So that's the thing. Count Dooku and Obi-Wan had unresolved issues because, again, they both bonded over Qui-Gon Jinn, and obviously with this whole betrayal thing. Right. Anyway, getting back on point here. So Mace gets a lesson in the corruption of war through the Jedi, and yet again, Mace Windu's character flaw is he puts the Jedi and the Force over everything, and that is a blind spot for him. And yet again, Count Dooku is like Count Dooku. He used to be a Jedi. No longer. He used to be a Jedi. He can't kill anyone. He can't murder anyone. Well, that's obviously not true. I mean, again, big blind spot, which led to a lot. Like led to Anakin Skywalker losing a hand, which also get a little payback on Mace Windu at the end of the day. His own folly yet again. No, but I don't want to like come down Mace Windu. Again, it's a character flaw. He's an interestingly flawed character in that regard. But back to like here's the really interesting stuff that Mace Windu. He gets out of the chair, man. He gets out of the chair like Thanos. He he leads the rescue mission. Importantly, though, he sees the folly in his actions, but he's proactive. Okay, I screwed up. We're going to this arena with a whole buttload of Jedi. We're going to save the day.
Yeah, he kind of leads the charge. He's kind of like the badass that we want him to be, that we want a Samuel Jackson Jedi to be.
If we see him do a lot of damage, very iconic bit of damage we're going to get to. We get to some kind of favorite moments or some iconic moments, but big takeaway after this big old action sequence and kind of beheadings and so on. Now Mace Windu at the end of this movie, he's wizened. Like he knows, okay, we now know the Sith's a big deal, and importantly, big takeaway, he's very suspicious of the Senate. So now like he's seeing how far the corruption's really digging in there. Now he's just suspecting, okay, the Senate's. I don't know if we should be as like cozy with the Republic as we have been before, because maybe it's he's being made aware of his blind spots, and the point being it's Windu as a learning character, which I think is important. After, because otherwise it's going to be a rinse and repeat character flaw. No, he's really he smartens up by the end of this movie, and he really smartens up by the time we get to Revenge of the Sith. So that's really important. So, yeah,
all right,
okay. But before we get to Revenge of the Sith, let's talk Clone Wars.
Okay, so you mostly have to take the lead on this, but I guess I could start with what I did see with the Boba Fett storyline. So basically, what I'm sorry, does that storyline have a name or anything? Do you want to kind of set the context for where that is in the show?
Well, basically, it's like a 3-part episode that ends season 2. It's kind of just kind of the Boba Fett arc. I mean, I don't know if there's really a title for it, but it's just
okay.
It's like the big Boba story.
So essentially, I feel like this is an interesting thing with Mace kind of having to go head to head with the demons of his past. But by the same token, you still kind of see some of that arrogance with him still. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Especially in that last exchange of like, well, you'll just have to kind of learn to. That's forgiving me is something you'll have to do on your own terms or something like that. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't give Boba any sort of satisfaction. I feel like that, of course, will lead to Boba just kind of continuing to go down a dark path. So, and of course, we do get a lot of Anakin and Mace in this. So I did sort of see the tension there. Other than that, it's I don't know, Dragon. You want to? I don't have much to say. I'm just trying to like contribute here. You want to take the wheel on this?
So something with Mace Windu I really noticed as I was getting the Clone Wars is that really basically reflecting on the character is that he has what I call the Belafonte factor. Now, Harry Belafonte, Leonard Nimoy spoke wonderfully about Harry Belafonte, the way he played Spock, and so I always go to the Belafonte things. That Belafonte. He was basically he would be a really static character, and he was like really stand in place until like the music played, and then he wouldn't move. He'd give like a grand pose, and that's kind of the way Nimoy played Spock, where basically he's like that's when Spock he's always in control until he snaps. And it's a big deal when he does like any little motion has all the more meanings. That's the thing with Mace Windu, where again traditionally guy who sits on the sidelines, sits around the council, just like okay, we got to do this, we got to do exposition plot, point A, point B. We got to get this done. Jedi. Sith is bad. We kind of do that with him on the side. But again, when he springs into action, when he's in the field, man, we do stories with him. We do the whole Boba Fett affair. Belafonte factor. Now it's like that. Now that the littlest things like now, like when he springs in action, it's a really big deal, and we get to see okay, the man is skilled in the end. The man sits in the chair for a reason. He's earned this spot. We build the hype and we build up to amazing action. I guess is kind of the better way of putting all that. But we see the mastery in effect. Like for example, there's some action bits where like I love this bit where he has to go across this giant chasm full of like droids and everything attacking him. He has to get from point A to point B with his clone troopers, and he uses the Force. Essentially, they kind of like cross this chasm and leap on the tanks that are coming at him, and also saving the bacon of his clone troopers. It's really cool. So again, these are the action bits I'm talking about. Tartakovsky did like a whole number of killing a whole bunch of a bunch of battle droids, again, seeing him as the very competent warrior. What we also highlight with Mace Windu is his attitude. So we see him interacting with other characters. I know you saw it, Tiki. He doubts droids.
Oh yeah, big time.
Which is a big, again,
Which is something that Leia would never agree with, Dragon.
Absolutely. Again, big parallel. Oh yeah, you're right. You wouldn't. Big parallel throughout the course of the whole series. From it really gravitated towards me. Again, it really made you reflect on how great Revenge of the Sith was with this. And again, honestly, whenever I go into Clone Wars, I always like, because I love Revenge of the Sith out of all the prequel movies. I think a lot of us do. I always just I'm looking at, oh god, we're building to this story. This is really cool. That's kind of the fun factor of Clone Wars for me. It's like, oh god, there's so much great subtext. Like, no, again, it's like the Better Call Saul, better Breaking Bad effect. You know where it's going. It's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. There are a lot of great parallels between him and Anakin that we get to really pull the thread on and see. Like Anakin, he loves droids, man. He built C-3PO for pity's sake. Built C-3PO. R2-D2's his buddy's
and
co-pilot.
I built C-3PO.
Exactly. But on the flip side of things, Mace Windu, he's a no-nonsense straight man. That's his character. And again, in complementing his very kind of that Belafonte style, like the guy's just, he's very, very straight-laced, very much, it's like reading a Sphinx when you look at this guy. Like, you don't know what he's thinking. He's very, very stiff. But again, like you see kind of that kind of no-nonsense attitude where, like, you put too much trust in droids, like they're an implement of war. It's like, well, I don't know why R2-D2 is not coming back to save our bacon. Ultimately, R2-D2 saves their bacon and earns a little bit of respect from Mace Windu. That's what I'm talking about. So there's interesting stuff like that throughout. And of course, another great example of kind of having Mace Windu as the straight man. We paired him with Jar Jar Binks for an episode or two.
Oh my god, which is an episode that I still need to watch, but from the clip I saw, it seemed delightful. And of course, Dragon, as you know, I'm kind of like I'm a fan of reinventing Jar Jar.
This show definitely does that very well, where we have Jar Jar better represented here. Where he's as silly as you remember him, but not as not uncomfortably as silly. It's like, oh, guys, just Jar Jar kind of doing his thing, and we're self-aware of it this time. Like we're not just like lucking into it. It's not like looking at a Rorschach. It's not looking at a Rorschach blood. It's like, is this supposed to be funny? Is it? Should we be calling somebody about this? Or in this case, no. It's Jar Jar. He is kind of very much kind of the silly clown of it all. Just less, less fart jokes here.
But Dragon, do we get any sort of tragic clown Jar Jar bits in Clone Wars? That's what I want to know. Because
had you watched this episode, Jar Jar did get some layers.
Okay, that's cool. Because I very much love the idea of like Jar Jar Binks popping up in a sequel trilogy movie as like this disgraced figure.
Sold on that too. I got to be honest. If they ever made that, one. In all seriousness, I love that. The dynamic Mace Windu, put simply, is that he underestimated him. He kind of saw him like very much other people do. So he's just kind of, I don't know how this. Basically, the running gag of Jar Jar throughout all Clone Wars. I don't know how this guy becomes a senator.
Pretty much, right? I mean, that's the running gag of Jar Jar, like, not throughout Clone Wars, but just throughout all of Star Wars in general.
And basically, what's so funny is that there's a great moment where Jar Jar calls Mace Windu out on, like, his lack of finesse in a situation where Mace Windu's not thinking, like, the personality and humanity of the situation, which kind of he botches something
nice.
Where the great Mace Windu just kind of barges into a situation, kind of makes it worse, where Jar Jar has to bail him out and kind of calls him out. Well, I won't do a Jar Jar impression, but it's just
please don't.
I know. I was saying I was getting results, and then you just barged in here. You just screwed it all up here. I mean, I have to do legwork to get us out of this. So again, it's quite interesting. The point being, Mace Windu, again, the learning character of Mace Windu is quite interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
More. I'll say the rest when we get to the Boba Fett stuff. All right.
Okay. All right. So finally, we get to Revenge of the Sith, of course, everyone's favorite prequel movie, And Dragon, I love the tension, kind of like that growing suspicion that Mace has of Anakin and of Palpatine. And of course, in this movie, Mace is kind of like the smartest guy in the room, the one who is kind of like picking up on all the shadiness that's going down. And that's one of my favorite things about Revenge of the Sith. Is Revenge of the Sith sort of feels like a car crash sort of happening in slow motion, and Mace Windu is the only one who knows it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely he's eyeing Palpatine because again he's had the wool pull over his eyes with Dooku and everything before. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna fall for this again. I'm suspecting the Senate, and like he's already thinking, okay, the Palpatine. I don't think he's gonna let go of his power by the time this whole conflict's over, which I'm not crazy about that. So while he's distrusting Palpatine, he's also distrusting Anakin, who's really close to Palpatine, which again, not helping Anakin's case. But again, there's this really great moment between Anakin and Mace leading up to the big scene, where again Anakin Skywalker, they gave him a lot of leeway because he was quote unquote the chosen one, and again Qui-Gon Jinn, who we kind of died for the Jedi sins, we gotta give him some points on that. So the chosen one prophecy might be true, even if it's not. We gotta abide by it just for the sake of good old Qui-Gon. But essentially, there's this really great moment where Anakin, he basically, after he learns, okay, Palpatine's the bad guy, gave him this really great little intimate scene where he's explaining he may or may not have created me. I don't know. He goes to Mace Windu and he says, okay, Palpatine's, he's a Sith. He's a Sith Lord. I think he's the Darth Sidious. I'm pretty sure he's Darth Sidious. The point being, he's the guy you're looking for. He's the big corruption in the Senate guy we're all looking for here. And Mace tells him to stay behind. But again, he intimates, you've earned my respect. If you stay behind and you let us take care of business here, you can majorly earn my respect. And again, at this point, he thinks, along with Yoda, Anakin Skywalker might bring about a room. We're sensing a lot of dark side in him. We're sensing a lot of darkness in him here. And again, this moment really kind of turns the tide on him. With that Palpatine tip-off, this guy's actually on our side. And it was a really refreshing, nice moment. And of course, he's horribly horribly wrong.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like with Revenge of the Sith, it's like you almost get there with kind of like that big, that mentor thing with Mace Windu of like, hey kid, like I was like you once. I could take you under my wing. You almost get there. But you don't. It's squandered. Of course, squandered in universe. Not when I say squandered, I kind of makes it sound like they squandered it. Anyways, hey, we got Simba Trey in the comments. He says he knows he is wrong for picking up those scrubs as cannon fodder because they were not on his and Palpatine's level. Dragon, can you comment to that?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So basically he's saying, like, infamously in Revenge of the Sith, in the big confrontation with Palpatine, he brings a number of Jedi, a few of them named Jedi, like we have Kit Fisto. Kit Fisto. Yeah, it's Kit Fisto anyway. We have Kit Fisto, the guy with all the tendrils, the green guy with all the tendrils, and a few other named Jedi. Again, retroactively, we've made a lot more interesting in Clone Wars. They didn't know at the time, though. It's not his fault. Okay, he didn't know they were going to be really big later on. The fact is, basically, we take out a lot of. Now we know they're really interesting guys, but at the time, they seemed like he brought a whole bunch of Jedi that got killed off really quickly by Palpatine. That's essentially what Simba Trey is saying. It's like, why? Like, what was Mace Windu thinking for bringing all those what seem in the moment to be like really like what are these guys like on day one on the job? Look at how easily they were taken. One of them took out the other guy. Basically, they all got taken out like Boba Fett. That's what they're essentially. Which again, it's unfortunate, and again, especially now because Kit Fisto is one of the best episodes. Like the one before I rewatched Clone Wars from the first. Apparently, I didn't get as far as I even thought I'd do with Clone Wars. I saw most of the first season. I didn't even think I finished the first season apparently. Because I didn't know, I thought Cad Bane was in season 2. Apparently, Cad Bane's towards the end of season 1, so that is as far as I got. Anyway, my point is, Kit Fisto has an episode in season 1 that I really that was the whole Grievous, like we're in the home of General Grievous. It's a really interesting episode. Anyways, the point is that's why Kit Fisto now was like really face palming, like Fisto. Anyway, so getting back on point here, but yeah, so he faces Palpatine, and he bests him again. Jedi Master. He's really good at what he does. Here again, fierce warrior, really balanced in the head area here. He almost gets some. Basically, he almost ends the whole franchise early. He almost ceases to create the rest of the Star Wars thing. If he just ended Palpatine right there, man, we don't have the original trilogy. So, in one sense of the word, I'm glad he didn't. Other sense of the word, it's a shame to see him go. But it's interesting. Like, all these rules and kind of lack of compassion with Anakin involved, because Anakin shows up on the scene and basically Palpatine, if Palpatine making his big plea to Anakin, like, I can save the woman you love, and again, like, Anakin begging him, like, look, we gotta send him on trial, and just please do this for me. Don't do this.
Yeah,
He was going for the kill, man. Again, it's a question of Mace Windu basically facing all this corruption, saying, okay, this guy, as powerful as he just killed a whole buttload of Jedi, killed a whole bunch of Jedi, and he controls the Sith. If we put him on trial, he's probably going to bribe or intimidate everybody. Even if we reveal he's a Sith Lord, it's probably not going to go away. Again, he's going by the Jedi way. We're not actively trying to kill people, but if it's like the rule of the samurai. It's the Bushido Code almost. We got to give him a fighting chance. Give him a chance to surrender, but if all else fails, we can't arrest him. I got to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going for the kill, so he's kind of in the right, but again, it's a Jedi kind of calling the shots, and they get into a little bit of hypocrisy there. And of course, like, if he showed the concern for you, he didn't consider Anakin's feelings at all.
It's almost kind of like an interesting sort of commentary on police state.
Exactly.
In some ways,
in a sense, yeah, it's very much kind of the Jedi point. Like, they're kind of an unlawful. They're kind of almost like what's the word I'm looking for?
Sort of like with Mace, he's kind of taking the shoot first, ask questions later approach when it comes to Palpatine in this moment.
Yeah, I'm trying to. There's a proper word for this. Like, it's not maybe not occupancy, but it's like when you have like a police state. I guess police state is the term. I thought there was another, like, we're under occupation police. Okay, point being, we're in a police state of some kind. Yeah,
sure.
Anyway. Okay, so but yeah, so of course, last thing I'm going to say about him on Revenge of the Sith, a valiant warrior, but the Achilles heel of for him is his blind devotion to the Jedi Order, which gave the Sith its greatest, its great seductive power. Because the Jedi never made any compromise, the Sith is all about the compromise, man. They're all about, like, hey, join me. The Sith had bags of humanity, which seduced Anakin Skywalker. Where the Jedi Order was like, no, you can't be married, which leads to the secret marriage.
Yeah,
you can't have kids, which leads to essentially the hope that is the next trilogy with the kids. So again, the Jedi Order was not perfect, and all of this, again, that Achilles heel of Mace Windu being the perfect representation of what the Jedi Order was, with all its flaws and everything, that led to his demise. And the Jedi Order, as we kind of learned, kind of had to die before it got better.
All right, cool. Okay, so let's get into the favorite moments. And Dragon, basically what we did here is we kind of just picked all the Batman stuff, all the whole, like, Mace Windu creating the villains of Star Wars, one kill at a time.
Yeah. So just to expound on it here, so of course he kills Jango Fett very swiftly, a very merciless death. Just like you've watched the scene, right? You remember that scene?
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember. I didn't even have to rewatch it. It's definitely one of the most memorable moments in Attack of the Clones, especially the aftermath of it with Jango in the helmet. And yes, I know that it should fall out of the helmet. I know, it's a nitpick.
Oh, I don't care about that. I don't think anyone really.
I don't either. I'm saying it, but anyways, but yeah, to your point, it is just a very swift, just kind of like execution style with Mace, and that kind of speaks volumes of his character flaw. You know what I mean? His character flaw really is that like we were saying about the shoot first, ask questions later. That is essentially what he's doing here, and he's not really thinking of the ramifications of that.
Yeah, of course. Speaking to the ramifications, of course, leads to kind of the really excellent follow up in Clone Wars. The consequences that came from just the merciless death of Jango in front of his own son, which he didn't see his son there, but still, he didn't care either. I don't think he would have cared. It's that, I love that after my favorite moment from that Boba Fett arc is when Boba Fett's eventually arrested and brought back to Coruscant, I guess, basically brought back to Mace Windu in the prison and everything. Is that Boba Fett went through a lot, and it was awesome, right? Just seeing Boba Fett, like, he planned like such. I love that as a premise. Like, Boba Fett wants revenge on one Jedi, and that's the Jedi who killed his father, and this is still him as a kid. But look how great how clever he was as a kid with his whole heist, and like how he almost blew Mace Windu up in his own room.
was almost kind of like a reverse Rise of the Resistance, if you will.
In a sense, yeah. Again, Rise of the Resistance from the bad guy's perspective, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And again, I love, like, after realizing, the vengeance and hatred that he birthed in Boba Fett, his response is what kills me. The response is why I had to say this episode, man, is that the response is Mace Windu, after everything he's been through, after realizing, he directly realizing is when he and Anakin were trapped under everything, oh god, this helmet, I remember this helmet, and I guess, learned from Obi-Wan, oh yeah, his son was there, because Obi-Wan met the son and met Jango Fett out of costume and everything. So he knows this, and now Mace Windu, he's been in the know. He's probably in a report somewhere. He was told all this. So Mace Windu's response, you're going to have, basically in response to, you're going to have to forgive me. You're going to have to find some way to forgive me. And again, that sums Mace Windu up. He's no apologies, it's like there's no apologies at all for what he did, no mercy, just truth and balance. That's what Mace Windu is. He's like, I killed your father. He was a bad person. I killed your father. If you come after me, because like this whole thing, like, shouldn't we make sure Boba Fett and like all this sort of stuff, all these guys that came after you should be dealt with? No, it's not. It's not Jedi business. So it's not. It's a non-issue. I think Mace Windu, he's prepared. Like, if that kid comes back and he kills me, I mean, I guess that's the way it is.
That's
it's like may the best man win. That's what it is. Like,
to me, it's like it almost kind of like negates it. It's a character flaw. It's kind of like one of those. This is going to sound like a weird example, but it's kind of like one of those stand-up comedians who like points out his own flaws so that people don't laugh at him. You know what I mean? With Mace Windu, it's almost kind of like, all right, like I know that there's a little bit of hubris involved with my lifestyle, but I have to kind of wear it on my sleeve and accept it, and it's part of me.
Absolutely. We have some comments here from Simba.
Yes, we do. All right. So Simba Trey, some very thoughtful comments, I might add. Simba Trey saying, so was Anakin genuinely trying to protect Palpatine because it's not the Jedi way to kill without a trial, or was he acting more selfish because he wanted him to show him his ways? Dragon, I will say it's probably like 20% the former and 80% the latter. That's how I would break it down.
Yes,
it's like with Anakin, there's some level of hypocrisy there that he sees, but mostly it's just that he doesn't want Padme to die.
Yeah, sure. I subscribe to that. It's most of the Padme factor, because again, basically, I think on some level Anakin does believe in, like, no, we should try to keep him alive, because that's what you try to instill in us. But mostly, let's be honest, I think Anakin, if he really does believe that, I think deep down that's him, like, knowing I absolutely need Padme to live, and because I've kind of fallen head over heels, specifically in Clone Wars, not any of that BS dialogue in Attack of the Clones. I love in Clone Wars animated series, I love Anakin and Padme secretly being married.
So I've heard. Yeah,
I think it's so. I gotta tell you, man, I love that couple so much, man. Just like the whole secret marriage is the most adorable thing I've ever seen. I love it. Anyway, point being, it's absolutely good. It's the Padme thing, no question.
All right, and then he also says, was Mace Windu wrong for being so hot-headed and trying to kill Palpatine right there without a trial?
That is the question. That's $1 million question.
It's interesting, and I feel like it's meant to be morally ambiguous, and of course, we as an audience know that Palps is evil, so it's like they don't know that for an absolute fact. Of course, they have their genuine suspicions, but it's definitely an interesting question.
Well, let me put it to you this way: it's less a question of like should he have killed Palpatine. It's more a question of like, it's kind of a bigger question, and looking at him as, again, if he's the representation of like the Jedi Order and everything. It's the hypocrisy of the Jedi as a whole. Where do they have the right to do something like this, where the system isn't working? It's like a whole different question of, do we have like the right, if somebody else is kind of our main superpower that we defer to, do they have the right to call the shots? And like, we throughout the trial, throughout all that sort of stuff, we're just going to kill him here. We gave him a shot. He makes a valid argument for why they should kill Palpatine. Let's make no mistake. So I'm kind of leaning towards he should have killed. I mean, he kind of had the right in the moment to kill Palpatine, because again, he exhausted everything else. So therefore, he kind of had the option. But then we're getting the whole like kind of vigilante justice argument of it all. Where again, who are these guys to make the calls? That's the bigger question, I guess.
Sure.
Anyway, so
alrighty,
right. Let's see.
Grievous.
Yes, Grievous.
Yeah, so this is just pure badass right here, man. Just like, I mean, this to me is kind of like the better way to show just like someone who has just an insane level of control over the Force, rather than kind of like the Dragon Ball Z style antics we got in Rise of Skywalker. Um, You know what I mean? Just kind of like, just all right. I am just going to just like literally force the air out of your lungs and crush your goddamn lungs because I am that much of a badass.
Oh yeah, I mean, basically we see Mace Windu again, kind of akin to the whole Palpatine thing, like, him going for the kill like that, and again seeing again establishing, he is very much like the fiercest warrior the Jedi have, who again basically he's now on the dark side. Like he's basically he's he could be teetering on the dark side, but he doesn't because he kind of has that really kind of strong ethical thing within himself. He does what it takes to end the conflict and impede the enemy in war by any cost, which includes like force crushing those lungs, man. And it's a built-in staple of Clone Wars of Grievous having that George Lucas bronchitis he got in Revenge of the Sith. Which, by the way, you remember this, right? They were never allowed to have Anakin Skywalker face General Grievous in that series because of the way it's set up in Revenge of the Sith. So like they always have to find these reasons of General Grievous always running away.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
You can never share a scene with Anakin Skywalker.
Sure. God.
Okay, so the Palpatine staff. We talked a little bit about it, but just
I think we've pretty well covered it. I think it is kind of like, as we said, with the moral ambiguity of it all. I feel like it's a question of police state and power, and like, do they have the right to control stuff like this?
Yes, but let's talk about the moment itself. Is that of course second to the Mustafar thing is probably the most pivotal scene in the entire prequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this and Mustafar, and basically this and the big, like Darth Vader, being all scarred up and everything. Those are the two most important scenes in all the prequels. He deflects the, importantly, again, possibly using that shattered point thing, he deflects the lightning back at Palpatine, which creates the Emperor, essentially. This creates the visage of the Emperor and creates the situation. Basically creates the giant moment of change, the big moment of truth, moment of opportunity for change for Anakin Skywalker. It's a huge moment that Mace Windu triggers and he creates in that moment. And again, the big parallel of Anakin and Mace.
It's almost kind of like a telltale choice. You know what I mean?
Precisely, yes. And that's what I'm saying. I want to reflect back for a moment on the whole Boba Fett thing, because when they were kind of trapped down there, after that moment happened between Boba Fett and the Mace Windu, he's like, "You're gonna have to find some way to forgive me, or you're gonna have to do that. I'm not gonna ask you to." Where Anakin says, "Aren't you worried about him, like getting revenge and everything?" So we saw they had two very different, approaches to feelings and revenge. Where Anakin saying, "Well, no, you should hold on to those feelings. You should pursue that, otherwise it's going to bite you in the end." Or Mason was just rolling with it. Of course, we have a big moment here where their fates truly do parallel each other, with the two youngest members on the Jedi to ever become Jedis. With with Mace and Anakin. Because think about it. They're both created and they both are created and die by lightning. Where Mace Windu, let me rephrase that. So basically, they both die by lightning in a sense. Their fates kind of parallel each other. With the death of Mace Windu, and of course, he's essentially Anakin. He chops off the old hand, and Palpatine shocks the crap out of Mace Windu, and ultimately to his death. And of course, Darth Vader's fate falls from a great distance after being shocked the crap out of.
Sure.
Well, I mean, more a little bit of Palpatine. The point being, it's related. There's a giant fall and there's a lightning. The point being, Palpatine was in the scene. The point being, the players were there. And that's the thing. It's like the fall burps, the fall burps and creates Darth Vader in that moment. That choice creates him, but also it's ultimately kind of like Darth Vader's penance for what he did to Mace Windu. He's going to die by the same way. So it's kind of interesting how they kind of yet again they parallel their fates with each other. And, it's kind of like the whole chosen one payoff in that regard as well. Yep. But again, importantly, it kicks off another way of looking at it. Well, last thing here is another way of looking at it is that it kind of kicks off the chosen one's path. But again, far different. It's a really odd way the Force's grand design saw that thing going. Like, okay, we're gonna kill off Mace Windu, gonna throw him down a giant, all these ridiculously tall buildings in Coruscant, and that's gonna create Darth Vader. And then again, the next generation's really what's gonna redeem everything here. But right now, we're gonna create a guy who's gonna kill a whole bunch of younglings and everything. But it's gonna work out, though. Just give it about 20 years. It's gonna work out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and of course, just to speak to it, though, I mean, just the death of Mace Windu in itself is a big moment in terms of just, it's almost kind of like seeing Santa Claus die, you know what I mean? It's like, of course, Sam Jackson has been killed off in pretty memorable ways. He's no Sean Bean, but, he's up there in terms of memorable on-screen deaths. I think Deep Blue Sea being his most famous. To quote Chappelle's show, I was eaten by a shark. A fucking shark ate me. But this is not a fun Samuel Jackson death in the best of ways. You know what I mean? This is very much a Shakespearean Samuel Jackson death. So I do think that they very much kind of nailed the pathos of the moment.
I also like the plot thing where, remember, when Mace Windu dies, we have two cats two cats are out of the bag here, where his death accelerates Order 66, as in Order 66 has to happen tonight because one, the guy who leads the Jedi Council has flown out the window, Buzz Lightyear style. He's gone, probably going to be back if we're being honest. But he went the full Buzz Lightyear.
But he's not falling with style.
Yeah, I mean, he got knocked out the window by the Luxo lamp, man. He's out. Probably, in our heart of hearts, he's going to come back and maybe not dead. But now we know he's dead, but there's speculation. The point being, he's probably dead. Anyway.
Oh God. Anyways.
Point being, though, he and now Anakin, of course, he's made his big choice, and of course now they can't put that cat back in the bag. So the point being, Order 66 has to happen tonight. So that's kind of a big take one. I think the really interesting question is, humanity at the end of the day, humanity endorsed by the Sith bested, the kind of the straight-laced Jedi ways. So again, kind of the strict Jedi ways were like no humanity. There's something kind of telling there. We're in support of humanity. By the same token, though, again, Jedi. Again, it kind of defeats the light, the whole light dark side. It's really twisted, man. This is why Kylo Ren has therapy issues. This is why. The Sith, they did promise, they promised to help, and obviously they didn't follow through on that though. Within Jedi, they were always like condemning marriage and kids and everything. Where if they just loosened up on that, we would have had a lot happier Star Wars. We would have.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I think that pretty much rounds everything up, right?
Yeah, we go to the impact now.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, Dragon, it's funny because this is a very tricky one. I feel like Mace Windu is a very morally complex character, as we kind of illustrated. I feel like he's much more shades of gray than the other two characters we're covering this month. But I feel like that kind of defines him, This is gonna sound kind of cliche, but his character is not within a shade of blue or shade of red. It's purple. God damn it. In terms of morality. And I feel like that is kind of like Mace Windu's legacy. Like Mace Windu does kind of like represent the hubris of the Jedi, but he also represents the just the total mindfulness and concentration and dedication that it takes to be a Jedi. And so in a lot of ways, he kind of represents both the pros and cons. He's a very complex character in that way. And just, as we've already kind of illustrated time and time again, he's Samuel Jackson, kids all across the nation look to Samuel Jackson. And it's kind of like, much like Finn was the fun-loving one, this guy's kind of like the stern badass, but it's still kind of like, very much seeing a hero on screen. So in a lot of ways, that is very much Mace's legacy. Trying to think if there's anything else here on my part, Dragon, because for some reason we have a tendency here with Samuel Jackson characters in particular. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I didn't feel nearly as out of place in this podcast as I did in the Nick Fury podcast, but still, Dragon, you contributed significantly more to this than I did because of your Clone Wars stuff, which I thank you for. So I'm just trying to think of any other big points that I want to make here, any other nuggets of wisdom that I I'm trying to pull out of myself. No, I think I got it, Dragon. Like I said, I think the the shades of red and blue are about the best I'm going to come up with for the evening, Dragon. I'm going to end it on a high note. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead.
It is quite appropriate when you think about again the end of Mace Windu's story, where we literally him representing the Jedi. We literally threw the Jedi Order out the window and seeing what came next. That's what we did with him at the end of the day, which is quite fascinating. That's the kind of
symbolism that George Lucas loves.
That is good symbolism, though. We literally threw it out the window, or as many people have joked, we threw it out the window.
Oh God.
Okay, no. In all seriousness, though, rounding it back to the actual impact here. So,
yeah.
Of course, Mace Windu again, very much kind of he was the example of the successful path as defined by the Jedi. The successful path Anakin Skywalker could have become. He could have become the next Mace Windu. They very much were on a track of becoming each other. They parallel each other very well. Mace Windu, he was underutilized till the end initially, and I feel the impact was in first glance, first pass in the prequels when they come out and people are just kind of taking them in. It's like, Mace Windu was so underutilized until the very end, and that fans and creators, so much so that fans and creators saw endless potential that manifests itself in various creative ways. Again, the primary stuff that we got, the Clone Wars animated show, where he kind of retroactively added more interesting stuff, interesting layers, gave him some origins on certain things, kind of paired him up with interesting characters. You got some Boba Fett closure, got a lot of really good mileage out of him in Clone Wars. Got some action stuff out of him in the Tarkovsky Clone Wars, even.
Mm-hmm.
We saw how, he crushed the Grievous's lungs, for pity's sake. There's all the novels, the Expanded Universe stuff. The thing I'm really proud of, and again, they're still working on this, by the way. It's been a while since we've talked about this. We've gotten fan films trying to bring him back and say, well, chances are fell through the window. Eventually he was probably, but people always assumed, if he survived, Vader probably found him and killed him down the line at some point. But regardless, he might have survived that fall, and he might have come back to only be killed yet again. Because we know he's dead because he's in Rise of Skywalker. We know he's dead. The fact of the matter is, for us, we saw there's this excellent fan film, Vader Shards of the Past, which essentially ends on the cliffhanger of if there's an episode 2, if they can fund and make an episode 2, which they're trying to do, by the way, Mace Windu would be coming back, and there's like the hanging chad that Vader and Mace Windu, that story would continue. It'd be quite interesting, don't you think?
Oh yeah.
The point being, people are always come back ways to kind of add more spokes to the Mace Windu wheel. Is my point here. Rise of Skywalker gave us a taste of that with kind of our Jedi cameo palooza.
It was literally a taste. It was like a spice. It was like, yeah, I'm gonna dash this little spice over the soup.
That's exactly what I'm saying, though. It's the fact that we kind of literally put it into the end movies. What, people always love Mace. Let's give him a little bit more Mace. We're actually going to bring him back in Rise of Skywalker. So we're going to bring him back a little. So in many ways, Mace Windu, he is again, he's the perfect symbol for the prequels, and that he's potential that we realized in the aftermath, and slowly but surely we're reflecting on more fondly now as we go back to it. Get into the black history of it all, had Jackson not been as big as he was at that time as an actor, and just kind of all the stuff he was getting into, of course, all the roles he has now, but even at that time, if Jackson had not been as big and as cast for this role, the character, for all we know, he might not even been black. Again, we brought more diversity.
That's a good point. Yeah.
All we had was the eye patch guy.
Sure.
That's all we had. We diversified things more. Without Sam Jackson in the fray, I would argue we don't get Finn in the sequel trilogy. I don't think we put the foot in the door necessarily. There's Lando. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you know what? I think Jackson helped a long way in that regard. The whole the representation angle. This character. Again, this character, he epitomized the Jedi Order, so well. He paralleled Anakin Skywalker great. Again, as I've kind of said, the death at this point. But maybe, again, at the end of the day, maybe this character helped bring in more fans of Star Wars who may not have found it in the first place, or people who just wanted that representation. I think that's something really nice and really something to take away with that character. Just seeing I got to be the good guy. I got to be taken out by Darth Vader. He almost killed Palpatine. He got so far, man. Again, he left an impact. The guy with the purple lightsaber. No one can ever take that away from him. But I like that now. There's a little bit more added to him, which is quite nice.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Nicely said, Dragon. Nicely said. And of course, big thank you to Simba Trey in the comments here. Let's see, he's got some more comments. First of all, just happy Mace Windu didn't get killed by a space shark. That would have been something.
Yep.
You know what would have been funny is if he would have gotten killed. Oh dear. Okay, Dragon, I'm gonna add some funny headcanon, all right? You ready?
Yeah.
So he takes his fall on Coruscant, right? Oh wait, no, never mind. I'm thinking, God damn it. Different planets. I was thinking if the fight was on Naboo, what if he ended up somehow getting eaten by one of those like big Naboo sea monster things? But I'm sorry, different planet. But just picture him getting eaten by one of those things, anyways. And so Symmetry also says, yeah, I agree. He had so much potential. He's definitely a badass, but he did he really beat Palpatine, or did Palpatine just let him win so Anakin could join him in the dark side? I'd say that's definitely a good argument.
It's a very interesting point because I mean, okay, so Palpatine gets the crap shocked out of him, and again, basically we have Palpatine's willing to get scarred up.
I mean, it very much is kind of like a look at what they did to me kind of situation there.
And again, he needs that for his end points. I think he's willing to get scarred up. Remember, he does have that whole like power thing where again, it sounds like he had an ice up his sleeve. It does.
And you know what? Even though he was scarred up, he still had time for some intimacy later in life, as we found out. So
okay, no.
So it's all good.
Honestly, I like to think that Palpatine was just so convinced that Anakin was going to step in. I like to think that. I think the smart play is I think Palpatine had a little bit more juice left in him. That was mostly performance for Anakin. But I don't know. I like to think that maybe Palpatine was out of options, but he was so convinced that Anakin was going to step up to him, though. I don't know. All right, anyway.
All right, so yeah, so big thanks to Simba Trey, man. I really appreciate your thoughtful comments. Always nice to see you pop up here. Of course, look forward to our final installment of Black History Heroes Star Wars, where we'll be talking about the man, the myth, the legend, the Lando.
Yes.
And until then, all right, folks. Well, that's all for now. Until next time, when we look at the shining stars in a galaxy far, far away who showed us worlds not simply black or white, but brimming with color as well as character.
On the next installment of Black History Heroes.
I was eaten by a Naboo sea monster! A fucking Naboo sea monster ate me!
A Sith Lord?